My mother called the cops on my girlfriend for a horrifying reason. I'm Arnold, 28 years old, and my life has been a carefully constructed prison built by the one person who was supposed to be my sanctuary, my mother. This isn't just a story about an overbearing parent. It's about a suffocating, calculated campaign of psychological warfare that nearly cost me the only healthy relationship I've ever known. It's a story I need to get out, to cast into the world, because the weight of it is crushing me and I'm standing at a crossroads, unsure of where to turn. My mother, a woman of 52 who still sees me as an extension of herself, has always been controlling. But the events of the last few months, and especially last week, didn't just cross a line. They vaporized it, leaving behind a crater of betrayal and fear. My story really begins when I was 8, the year my father walked out. He packed a single suitcase, knelt down to my level, and told me to be a good man for my mother. Then he was gone, a ghost who never called, never wrote, never looked back. His absence created a vacuum, and my mother filled it with an all-consuming, possessive form of love. She became my whole world because, as she relentlessly reminded me, I was hers. She worked 2 demanding jobs, her hands often raw from her work as a dental hygienist, and her evenings spent cleaning office buildings. I will forever be grateful for the sacrifices she made, for the food on our table and the roof over our heads. But that gratitude became a currency she used to buy my compliance, my devotion, my very identity. Her love wasn't a gift. It was a debt I was expected to repay for the rest of my life. "No other woman will ever love you like I do, Arnold," she'd whisper, her voice a soft, insidious melody as she tucked me into bed, long after I was old enough to tuck myself in. "They'll try to steal you from me. They're all snakes, just waiting to sink their fangs into my good boy." This was her mantra, repeated so often that it became a part of my internal monologue. When I was in middle school, during one of our quiet evenings, she made me take her hands and make a solemn promise. "Promise me," she'd said, her eyes welling with theatrical tears, "that I will always be your number one. Even when you get married someday, I come first. Always." I was a child. I promised. How could I not? I thought this was the shape of a single mother's love, fierce, protective, a little bit lonely. I didn't see the cage being built around me, bar by gilded bar. She'd recount her sacrifices like a soldier listing battle honors. "I gave up my youth for you," she'd say over dinner. "Do you know how many men asked me out? Good men with money. But I turned them all down. I couldn't bear to spend an evening away from my little man." She was the martyr, and I was her sacred, lifelong cause. The gifts were extravagant, far beyond our means. A brand new gaming console when I knew money was tight, expensive sneakers, and trips. The trips were the strangest part. She called them mother-son bonding time, but they felt more like dates. We went to beach resorts to cozy cabins in the mountains. We would always, without fail, share a hotel room, and she would insist on getting one with a single king-size bed. "It's cozier this way, don't you think?" she'd say, patting the space beside her. At night, she would insist on cuddling while we watched movies on the small hotel television, her arm draped possessively over my chest. I felt a profound sense of discomfort, a wrongness I couldn't name, but I'd lie there stiffly, enduring it because to pull away would be to break her heart, and I was conditioned to believe that her heartbreak was the greatest sin I could commit. High school was a new battlefield. The specter of other girls became a tangible threat. Every crush, every innocent flirtation, was met with a calculated dissection and dismissal. I mentioned Sarah, a girl with a bright, infectious laugh. "Oh, she's far too pretty, Arnold. Girls who look like that are never faithful. They get bored easily. She sleeps around. I can guarantee it." I talked about Jessica, a quiet, brilliant girl from my chemistry class. "She's too quiet. There's something off about her." Those are the ones with serious mental problems, hiding dark secrets. Then there was Rachel, the captain of the girls' soccer team. An athlete? She'll be more interested in her team than in you. She'll probably leave you for someone stronger, someone more masculine. There was always an excuse, a meticulously crafted reason why no one was good enough, why everyone was a danger. The decision to send me to an all-boys Catholic school was framed as a quest for a superior education. But I knew, even then, it was a strategic move to build higher walls, to limit my exposure to the snakes she so deeply feared. My first real relationship, at 19, was a disaster orchestrated entirely by her. Her name was Monica, a different Monica, and for 6 beautiful months, I thought I'd finally found a slice of normalcy. My mother, of course, saw her as the ultimate enemy. The sabotage began subtly. She started calling Monica's house landline at all hours of the night. "Arnold, it's an emergency," she'd sob into the phone, her voice thick with manufactured panic. "The pipes burst," or "I think I'm having a heart attack." I'd race home, my own heart pounding, only to find her sitting calmly on the sofa, watching television. "Oh, I just miss you terribly," she'd say with a dismissive wave of her hand. She became a phantom presence in my relationship. She would magically appear at the movie theater where Monica and I had planned to meet, clutching her side and complaining of a sudden, debilitating migraine that only I could help her with. She'd show up at the restaurant where we had dinner reservations, claiming her car had broken down 3 blocks away and she needed me to fix it right that instant. The interruptions were constant, relentless, and brilliant in their execution. Monica, bless her heart, tried to be patient. She saw a lonely, overprotective mother. But after months of the ceaseless drama, the endless emergencies, the feeling of being constantly watched, she grew weary. "I can't do this, Arnold," she told me one evening, her eyes filled with a sad resignation. "I feel like I'm in a relationship with you and your mother. It's too much." She ended it, and a part of me was almost relieved. The stress of managing my mother's anxieties and my own love life was exhausting. After Monica, I learned my lesson. Secrecy became my shield. Throughout college, my dating life was a covert operation. I met women, I had relationships, but they existed in a world my mother knew nothing about. No one was ever brought home. No one's name was ever mentioned. This fragile system worked until I graduated. The harsh reality of student loans and entry-level IT support salaries forced me to move back in with her. Just for a little while, I told myself. It was only supposed to be for 6 months, a temporary measure to save for a down payment on my own place. Those 6 months were the most suffocating of my life. Living under her roof again as an adult, I was no longer a child she could subtly guide. I was a man she had to actively restrain. Her possessiveness went into overdrive. She'd wait until I was in the shower and then meticulously go through my phone, reading my texts, checking my call logs. When I came home from seeing friends, I was subjected to an interrogation that would make a seasoned detective proud. "Where were you? Who was there? What did you talk about? Did you talk to any girls?" She followed me. A few times, I'd be out at a bar with friends, and I'd catch a glimpse of her car, parked across the street, her silhouette a familiar, terrifying shape in the driver's seat. She decided my entire wardrobe was unacceptable and took me on a shopping spree. Buy me clothes she picked out, clothes that made me look younger, more like the high school boy she missed. "You'll wear these from now on," she declared, cleaning out my closet of anything I'd bought for myself. Then came the talk about our future, a future she envisioned as a seamless continuation of our present. "We should buy a house together, darling," she'd say, circling real estate listings in the newspaper. "Just the two of us. A nice little place with a garden. You don't need anyone else. Arnold, you'll always have me." The day I finally moved out, when I turned 25, was a declaration of war. I found a small apartment across town, but she insisted on keeping a spare key for emergencies. Her emergencies consisted of letting herself into my apartment while I was at work. I'd come home to find my furniture rearranged, my refrigerator stocked with the sugary cereals and frozen dinners of my childhood, and little notes left on my pillow. "Miss my boy today," they'd say, signed with a heart. The violation was profound. This space was supposed to be mine, my first taste of true independence, and she had invaded it, remaking it in her image. When I finally worked up the courage to ask for the key back, the dam of her emotions burst. She cried for 3 hours straight, a gut-wrenching, theatrical performance of grief. She accused me of abandoning her, of being ungrateful, of being just like my father. The guilt was a physical weight, but I stood my ground. I had to. That single key represented my freedom. That brings me to the present and to Monica. The real Monica, the one who changed everything. I met her 8 months ago at a friend's summer barbecue. She's 24, a kindergarten teacher with a heart so big it seems to spill out of her. She spends her weekends volunteering at animal shelters and is studying part-time to become a school counselor. She has this incredible, calming presence, a way of making everyone around her feel seen and valued. Her kindness isn't a performance. It's the very core of who she is. We clicked in a way I had never experienced. It wasn't just attraction. It was a deep, immediate recognition of a kindred spirit. With her, for the first time in my entire life, the constant, low-level anxiety that had been my lifelong companion simply melted away. I could be myself, flaws and all, without fear of judgment. I was cautiously honest with her about my mother from the beginning. I told her about the controlling behavior, the possessiveness, the guilt trips. But I admit I downplayed it. I framed it as the quirks of a lonely, single mother. How do you explain the sheer, suffocating strangeness of it all without sounding insane? How do you tell the wonderful, normal woman you're falling for that your mother still tries to cuddle with you? So I gave her the sanitized version, hoping not to scare her away. Monica, in her infinite optimism, had a simple solution. "Maybe she's just lonely, Arnold," she suggested, her hand resting gently on mine. "Maybe she's afraid of being replaced. Once she meets me and sees how happy you are, things will get better." What mother wouldn't want to see their son happy with a good person? I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her with every fiber of my being. A tiny, naive part of me clung to the hope that my mother would see Monica's goodness, see the genuine happiness in my eyes, and finally let me go. Let me have this one good thing for myself. So we planned the meeting. Monica, ever thoughtful, prepared for it like a diplomatic summit. She bought a new dress, a conservative but pretty floral print. She spent an entire afternoon baking a batch of my mother's favorite oatmeal raisin cookies, arranging them perfectly in a reusable container. She must have spent an hour getting ready that day, constantly turning to me and asking, "Does this look appropriate? It's not too much, is it?" The meeting was set for a Sunday afternoon at my mother's house, her territory. I had been putting it off for weeks, inventing excuses, but Monica gently convinced me that avoidance was only making it worse. The longer we wait, the more she'll build it up in her head, she'd reasoned. Honesty is always the best way forward. We drove over in Monica's car, as mine was conveniently in the shop, a lie told to give us an easy escape route if needed. Monica was a bundle of nervous energy, chattering excitedly about how she hoped my mother would share embarrassing childhood stories about me. She had a list of conversation starters prepared, questions about my mother's work, our shared hobbies. She was trying so hard. As we pulled up to the familiar suburban house, a knot of dread tightened in my stomach. We walked up the path, Monica clutching the container of cookies like a peace offering. Before I could even raise my hand to knock, the front door swung open. My mother stood there, having clearly been watching for us from the window. Her eyes, cold and assessing, bypassed me completely and landed on Monica. She looked her up and down, her lip curling in a faint sneer, as if she were examining a piece of contaminated meat. "Arnold," she said, her voice flat and devoid of any warmth. "Who is this?" "Mom, this is Monica," I said, trying to keep my own voice steady. "My girlfriend. I've been so excited for you to finally meet her." The shift in my mother's expression was instantaneous and terrifying. The bland disapproval hardened into a mask of pure venom. "She is not welcome in my house," she spat, stepping back to block the doorway. Monica, though clearly taken aback, tried to recover. She smiled politely, extending the container of cookies. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Mrs." My mother didn't let her finish. With a swift, violent motion, she knocked the container from Monica's hands. It clattered onto the porch, the lid popping off and sending cookies scattering across the concrete. "We don't want your pathetic bribes," my mother hissed. She pointed a trembling finger at Monica. "You're trying to take advantage of my son. I can see right through your sweet little act. You're after his money, aren't you?" The accusation was so ludicrous, it would have been laughable in any other context. "I work in IT support. I have student loans and a car payment. I barely have enough money to cover my own expenses, let alone be a target for a gold digger." Monica, flustered but still composed, tried to defend herself. "Ma'am, I have my own career. I'm a teacher. I'm not interested in Arnold's finances." "Lies," my mother shrieked, cutting her off. She turned her fury on me. "Can't you see what she's doing? She's manipulating you. She's too young for you. She probably has a dozen other boyfriends. You need to come inside alone so I can talk some sense into you." "No," I said, the word feeling foreign and powerful on my tongue. "We're staying together." I took Monica's hand. My mother's face contorted with rage. She lunged forward, grabbing my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "You're not leaving with this home wrecker." Monica, seeing the situation spiraling, took a step back. "Arnold, maybe we should just go." That was all the encouragement my mother needed. "Stay away from my son," she screamed at Monica, her voice echoing through the quiet Sunday afternoon. Neighbors' curtains began to twitch. A man watering his lawn paused and stared. "You're trying to destroy our family. You tramp." I'd had enough. I pulled my arm free from her grasp, grabbed Monica's hand more firmly, and turned back toward the car. My mother followed us, her tirade escalating into a full-blown public spectacle. She stumbled down the driveway after us, screaming that I was making the biggest mistake of my life, that Monica was a disposable tramp who would leave me the second someone better came along. She was still standing in the middle of the street, a shrieking, gesticulating figure of fury as we drove away. The drive back to my apartment was shrouded in a thick, suffocating silence. Monica just stared out the passenger window, her expression unreadable. She didn't say a single word for 20 long minutes. When we finally got back to my place, she walked straight into the bathroom and closed the door. I could hear the sound of the shower running for a very long time. When she finally emerged, her eyes were red and puffy, but she had a fragile smile on her face. "I'm fine," she said, her voice a little hoarse. "Let's just forget about it." But we couldn't forget about it, because my mother wouldn't let us. Over the next 3 days, my phone became a weapon she used against me. She called me 67 times. I didn't answer, so she filled my voicemail with a torrent of poison. There were the guilt trips. "After everything I've sacrificed for you, this is how you repay me? With this ungrateful betrayal." There were the warnings. "That girl has brainwashed you, Arnold. You're destroying your relationship with the only person on this earth who truly loves you. And there were the pleas. Please, just come home. Let me fix this. I can make it all better. The text messages were a constant barrage, arriving at all hours of the day and night, each one a digital dagger designed to wound and manipulate. Then, she escalated. She started calling my workplace. It's a family emergency, she'd tell the receptionist, her voice choked with fake urgency. The first time my boss, Steve, was understanding. The second time, he was concerned. By the fourth call in 2 days, he pulled me aside into his office, his expression a mixture of pity and professional annoyance. "Arnold, is everything okay at home?" he asked. The wave of shame that washed over me was nauseating. I had to explain, in the most generic terms possible, that my mother was having some trouble accepting my new girlfriend. It was humiliating, unprofessional, and utterly mortifying. But the true breaking point, the moment I realized this was no longer just family drama, but something far more sinister, came when she went after Monica's career. She showed up at Monica's elementary school. She found out where she worked, drove the 15 minutes from my apartment, and simply waited in the parking lot. When Monica came out for her lunch break, my mother cornered her, blocking her path to her car. Monica, recounting the story to me later that evening, was visibly shaking. My mother had accused her of seducing me, of being a predator. Then came the threat, cold and precise. "I will tell everyone at this school what kind of person you are," my mother had snarled. "I'll tell them you're an inappropriate, unstable person who shouldn't be allowed anywhere near children." It took Monica's principal, a formidable woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, physically escorting my mother off the school property to get her to leave. Monica came back to my apartment that evening, her usual bright energy completely extinguished. She looked small and fragile. Has she always been this way?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. And for the first time, I was completely honest. I didn't downplay it. I didn't make excuses. Yes, I admitted, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. But never, ever to this extent. That night, we had the talk I had been dreading. Monica sat on the edge of my bed, her hands twisting in her lap. "I care about you so much, Arnold," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "But I cannot live like this. I can't handle this harassment. I won't ask you to choose between me and your mother. That's not fair. But I need to know if you're willing to set real, firm boundaries with her. Or if you just expect me to tolerate her abuse. Because I won't stay in a relationship where I am constantly being attacked. I can't." She was right. I had been a passive participant in my own life for too long, always trying to placate my mother, to manage her moods, to avoid conflict. I had accepted her behavior as a twisted form of normal. The thought of directly confronting her, of drawing a line in the sand, made me feel physically ill. But the thought of losing Monica, of my world returning to that lonely, suffocating grayness, that was infinitely worse. I had to do something. The next morning, I drove to my mother's house. Monica came with me, a silent pillar of support. "I'll wait in the car," she said. "I won't go to the door again. But I'm here for you." When my mother answered the door, her face was wreathed in a triumphant smile. "Oh, Arnold, I'm so glad you've come to your senses," she gushed, reaching for a hug. "I knew you'd realize that girl was all wrong for you. Blood is thicker than water, my boy." I stepped back, avoiding her embrace. The hurt that flashed in her eyes was sharp, but I held my ground. "I'm not here to break up with Monica," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "I'm here to ask you, to tell you, that you need to respect my relationship. You need to stop harassing her." The smile vanished. Her face hardened. She laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. "Respect? There is nothing to respect about a tramp who is so obviously using you for your money and attention." "She is a good person," I insisted, my voice rising. "She makes me happy. I need you to give her a chance." "No," she shot back, her expression shifting into her familiar mask of martyrdom. "If you choose her, you're choosing to throw away everything I have ever done for you. I gave up my life for you. I sacrificed my own chances at happiness to raise you. And this is how you repay me? By choosing some little tramp over your own mother? If you marry her, I will never speak to you again." "That will be your choice, Mom," I said quietly. "But I'm not ending a healthy, happy relationship because you disapprove." She burst into tears, the sudden, violent sobs I knew so well. "She's poisoned your mind against me. Before she came along, you were a good son. You appreciated me." I turned to leave. I couldn't do this anymore. She grabbed my arm again, her grip surprisingly strong. "You can't go. We need to work this out right now. You're being unreasonable." I pulled my arm free and walked away without looking back. I got in the car where Monica was waiting, her face etched with worry. As we drove away, I saw my mother in the rearview mirror. She had run into the middle of the street, waving her arms frantically, her mouth open in a silent scream, pleading for me to come back. "Is this normal for her?" Monica asked softly. I could only shake my head. "No, this is escalating beyond anything I've ever seen before. That was 5 days ago. In the time since, the deluge of her rage has been relentless. She has called my phone over 200 times. The text messages have become a bizarre, terrifying mix of tearful guilt trips about her sacrifices and veiled threats about what she'll do if I don't call her back. She began stalking my apartment building in earnest. My neighbor, a kind, elderly woman, mentioned seeing a woman who matched her description sitting in a parked car across the street for hours at a time, just watching. Then, yesterday, the unthinkable happened. She somehow got Monica's personal cell phone number. She called her 20 times in a row. Monica, thinking it must be a life or death emergency, finally answered. My mother didn't yell. Her tone, Monica told me, was calm, chillingly rational. For 30 minutes, she delivered a monologue explaining in excruciating detail why Monica wasn't good enough for me, why she was ruining my life, and why, if Monica truly loved me, she would do the noble thing and break up with me for my own good. After the first few minutes, Monica had the presence of mind to start recording the call on her phone. In the recording, my mother's voice is a venomous serpent. I know what's best for Arnold, because I raised him. You are a child. You don't understand real love. You're just a phase, an experiment before you find someone better. If you really loved him, you would want him to have a good relationship with his mother. You would step aside. When Monica finally found her voice and told her that wasn't going to happen, the calm facade shattered. Then I will make sure everyone at that school of yours knows what kind of person you really are, my mother threatened, her voice dropping to a low growl. I will tell them you are manipulative, that you're inappropriate with parents. I'll call your mother and father and tell them their daughter is a home-wrecking whore who is trying to tear a family apart. Monica hung up. My mother immediately called back 15 more times. Monica had to turn her phone off completely. And now, I sit here typing this out because I don't know what to do. Monica is a bedrock of patience and understanding, but I can see the toll this is taking. She's quieter. The light in her eyes is dimmed by stress. She jumps every time her phone rings. My mother isn't backing down. She's escalating, and I am terrified of what she will do next. There's a part of me, a large part, that wants to change my number, move away, and go completely no contact. But she is all the family I have. My grandparents passed away years ago, and there are no siblings, no close cousins. The idea of cutting her out completely fills me with a deep, conditioned guilt. But the idea of letting her destroy my relationship with Monica, the best thing that has ever happened to me, is unbearable. I even tried calling my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, in a moment of desperation. Her response was a bucket of cold water. "Oh, you know how your mother is," she'd said with a dismissive sigh. "She's always been dramatic. You should be more understanding, Arnold. She's just lonely." Then she added the line that made my blood run cold. "Maybe this Monica isn't the right girl for you if she can't handle a little family drama." A little family drama. I feel like I'm lost in a fog, with monsters circling, and I don't know which way is out. Things went from a nightmare to a full-blown inferno. The day after I first wrote about my ordeal, my mother escalated her campaign in a way I could never have imagined, a way so cruel and calculated it still makes me sick to my stomach. I was at work, trying to focus on a network diagnostics report, when my phone rang. It was Monica. She was crying so hard I could barely make out her words, her sobs punctuated by ragged, desperate gasps for air. "You need to come to my school," she choked out. "Right now. Something terrible has happened." The 20-minute drive felt like an eternity. Every horrible possibility raced through my mind. When I burst into the school's main office, I found Monica sitting in a chair, looking pale and shattered. Her principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, stood beside her, a hand resting on her shoulder, her expression grim. Mrs. Rodriguez explained what had happened. My mother had called the school district's main administrative office that morning. She had filed a formal, written complaint against Monica, accusing her of having an inappropriate relationship with a parent and engaging in unprofessional behavior. The complaint was a masterpiece of malicious fiction. My mother claimed that Monica was dating the father of one of her current kindergarten students. She had fabricated entire scenarios, telling the district that she had personally witnessed them in compromising situations, and that Monica was using her position of authority as a teacher to pursue relationships with vulnerable parents. The parent she was referring to, of course, was me, but she had deliberately and cunningly omitted the fact that Monica and I were in a relationship and that I don't have any children, let alone one in her class. She had twisted the narrative to make it sound like Monica was a predator, a serious and fireable offense. The district, legally obligated to take such an accusation seriously, launched an immediate, formal investigation. Monica was pulled out of her classroom and subjected to an interrogation by the superintendent. She had to provide a detailed statement about our relationship, complete with a documented timeline of how and when we met. She was suspended with pay, pending the outcome of the investigation. Suspended. She was banned from her own classroom, forbidden from contacting her students or their parents. For a teacher like Monica, who adored her job and her kids. This was a professional death sentence. Her reputation was in tatters. The investigation dragged on for 2 excruciating weeks. Monica was a ghost of herself. She barely ate. She couldn't sleep. She would just pace the apartment, her mind replaying the accusations over and over. Even when they clear me, Arnold, she whispered one night, her eyes hollow, people will always wonder. The parents will hear rumors. They'll always look at me and wonder if there was some truth to it. My anger was a living thing, a white-hot rage unlike anything I had ever felt before. I called my mother. I screamed at her. I cursed at her. I told her exactly what I thought of her vile, disgusting tactics. She played the innocent. I was just concerned about inappropriate behavior in our schools, she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. I had no idea that was your little girlfriend you were seeing. It was a blatant, insulting lie. In her complaint, she had described my car, mentioned a specific restaurant we had frequented, and even detailed a blue dress Monica had worn on one of her dates. She had been stalking us, gathering ammunition for this very attack. There was no way it was a coincidence. Ultimately, the district investigation completely exonerated Monica. They found no evidence of any wrongdoing and concluded that the complaint was vexatious, filed in bad faith. She was allowed to return to work, but the damage was done. The stress and humiliation had left a deep, permanent scar. While she was attacking Monica's life, my mother's focus on me became even more erratic and frightening. She began showing up at my apartment building at all hours. Sometimes she'd be there at 6 a.m. as I was leaving for work. Other times she'd be buzzing my intercom relentlessly at 11 p.m. Her car became a permanent fixture in the visitor parking lot. She started following me to work every single day, parking her car at the edge of the lot, and just sitting there, watching for 8 solid hours. When I confronted her, marching out to her car during my lunch break, she rolled down the window and smiled sweetly. "I'm just worried about you, sweetie," she'd said. "That woman is making you look so tired and stressed. A mother needs to keep an eye on her son's well-being." My coworkers noticed. My manager, Steve, called me in for another awkward meeting. "Arnold, my productivity was slipping. The constant stress was making it impossible to concentrate." The situation hit a new low when she went after Monica's family. She somehow unearthed her parents' home phone number and address. She called Monica's mother, introducing herself as my mother, and launched into a tirade about how their daughter was a malicious homewrecker who was tearing our close-knit family apart. Monica's parents were, understandably, horrified and confused. Her father, a no-nonsense man, wanted to call the police immediately. Her mother, more softly, suggested that maybe Monica should reconsider our relationship, that no man was worth this level of insane drama. During this unending chaos, my own body started to betray me. I began having panic attacks, waking up in the middle of the night, drenched in a cold sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs. I couldn't focus at work. I started avoiding public places, terrified I would see her car, her watching eyes. Monica, seeing my decline, knew we had reached a tipping point. "Ignoring her isn't working, Arnold," she said, her voice firm but kind. "It's just making her bolder." The final straw, the act that finally forced my hand, was her second attempt to get Monica fired. This time, she filed a complaint directly with the state education department. She claimed that Monica was emotionally unstable and a potential danger to children. She fabricated stories of Monica making threats against her, painting a picture of a deranged, unhinged teacher. This triggered another, more serious investigation at the state level. Monica had to undergo a mandatory psychological evaluation. The process was humiliating, invasive, and exhausting. But through it all, her principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, was a rock. She told Monica privately that in her 20 years in education, she had never witnessed a complaint so transparently false and malicious, so clearly born of personal spite. After this second complaint was filed, Monica sat me down. The exhaustion was etched on her face. "I love you, Arnold," she said, her voice heavy with a pain that broke my heart. "But I cannot sacrifice my career and my mental health. I can't live like this." She gave me an ultimatum. Either I found a way to make my mother's harassment stop, completely and immediately, or she was leaving. She had to. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I went online and researched restraining orders. I found a lawyer who specialized in harassment and domestic conflict. I laid everything out for her. The hundreds of phone calls, the voicemails, the text messages, Monica's recorded conversation, the documentation of her stalking my work and my apartment, the 2 false, malicious complaints filed against Monica's employer, the harassment of her parents. The lawyer's eyes widened as she reviewed the mountain of evidence. "You have an incredibly strong case," she said, "not just for a restraining order, but potentially for criminal charges for filing false reports." The next day, I filed for a temporary restraining order against my own mother. A court date was set for 2 weeks later. When the sheriff served her with the papers, her reaction was predictably explosive. She called me, screaming and sobbing about betrayal, about how I was airing our family's personal business in public, about how I was breaking her heart. She begged me to withdraw the request, promising she would leave Monica alone forever if I would just talk to her. For the first time in my life, I didn't respond. I blocked her number. I maintained complete and total silence. The court hearing was a surreal out-of-body experience. My mother arrived with a lawyer, dressed in a conservative suit, looking like a concerned, respectable parent. Her lawyer argued that this was merely a family dispute that didn't warrant legal intervention. But when our lawyer presented the evidence, the call logs, the recording, the official findings from the school district and the state that the complaints were filed in bad faith, the judge's demeanor changed entirely. He looked directly at my mother. Did you or did you not file these complaints against Ms. Garcia's employer, knowing that the allegations within them were false? Her lawyer quickly advised her not to answer. It didn't matter. Her silence was an admission of guilt. The judge granted a 1-year restraining order. My mother was legally prohibited from contacting me or Monica in any way, including through third parties. She was banned from our workplaces and my apartment building. Any violation would result in her immediate arrest. As we left the courthouse, she tried to approach me in the parking lot, her face a mask of desperation. Her lawyer physically stopped her, reminding her that the order was in immediate effect. She just stood there, watching us as Monica and I got in our car and drove away. That was a week ago. We have not heard a single word from her since. The state education department officially cleared Monica, and her job is secure. For the first time in months, there is quiet. It's a fragile, cautious quiet, but it's a start. I feel an immense sense of relief, but also a profound, lingering sadness. This is what it took. A legal document, a threat of arrest, to get my own mother to leave me alone. I'm not naive. I don't think this is over. But for now, we can breathe. I wish I could say the restraining order was a magic bullet, but my mother is nothing if not resourceful. Denied direct access, she simply evolved her tactics, beginning a campaign of insidious, indirect harassment designed to torment us from the shadows, all while maintaining plausible deniability. About 2 weeks after the court hearing, the strange incidents began. Monica went out to her car one morning to find all 4 of her tires slashed. The police were called, a report was filed, but with no security cameras in her apartment's lot, they chalked it up to random vandalism. We knew better. A few days later, Monica's landlord received an anonymous call, reporting that Monica was running an illegal business out of her apartment. An inspection was required. The landlord found nothing, of course, but he mentioned to Monica that the caller had been an older woman who seemed to know an uncanny amount about Monica's daily schedule. Then my mother started weaponizing other people. My Aunt Linda, who had previously dismissed my concerns, suddenly started calling me out of the blue. Her calls were fishing expeditions, filled with oddly specific questions about my life, my happiness with Monica, our future plans. I later found out she was acting as a proxy, dutifully reporting every detail back to my mother. It wasn't just family. A coworker of Monica's mentioned a bizarre encounter at the grocery store. An older woman had approached her, asking a series of casual but prying questions about Monica's work schedule and personal life, claiming she was a prospective parent considering the school. My mother also began appearing at the fringes of our life. Monica's school held its annual spring fair, a big community event. We were there, helping run a booth, when Monica suddenly froze. She pointed across the crowded playground. There, standing near the fence, partially hidden by a tree, was my mother. She was far enough away not to violate the restraining order's distance requirement, but she was there, watching us with an unnerving intensity. We left immediately, a cloud of paranoia descending over us. Public events no longer felt safe. Monica started declining invitations to social gatherings, terrified my mother would materialize like a malevolent ghost. This growing isolation was exactly what my mother wanted. The harassment continued. Monica's parents began receiving a barrage of hang-up calls, always late at night or in the early morning hours. My own workplace started receiving anonymous complaints about my job performance, vague accusations that I was distracted and unreliable. My supervisor, who knew the situation, filed them away, but warned me the paper trail could become a problem. The constant vigilance was utterly exhausting. We were living in a state of high alert, looking over our shoulders, second-guessing every interaction with a stranger. The breaking point, the incident that pushed us from fear into action, was the break-in. Monica came home from work to find her apartment door unlocked. Nothing of value was stolen, but her personal space had been systematically violated. Her photo albums were taken out and left open on her bed. Her laptop was on. Her dresser drawers were all slightly ajar. Someone had been there, not to steal, but to go through her things, to touch her life, to send a clear and terrifying message. I can get to you anytime I want. The police found no signs of forced entry. Someone had used a key or was a professional at picking locks. The detective on the case told us that this type of violation, where the goal is psychological terror, not theft, was a classic hallmark of advanced stalking cases. Monica was terrified. She couldn't stay in her apartment alone after that. She started staying at my place every night, but we lived in constant fear of the building manager noticing and enforcing the strict no long-term guest policy. We knew we couldn't go on like this. We installed security cameras in both our apartments. We started documenting every suspicious incident in a detailed log. And then I took the step I should have taken months earlier. I hired a private investigator. He was expensive, a grizzled ex-cop, but he was worth every single penny. Within 2 weeks, he had what we needed. He had photographic evidence of my mother meeting with and paying a man who he then tailed, capturing photos of that same man conducting surveillance on Monica's apartment building. He uncovered that my mother had hired a third party to make the anonymous calls to Monica's employer and landlord. She wasn't just acting out. She was orchestrating a conspiracy. Armed with this new, irrefutable evidence, we went back to court. My mother's lawyer tried to argue there was no direct proof she was behind the harassment, but the judge was not buying it. He extended the restraining order for another year and added specific language prohibiting any harassment through intermediaries. But he didn't stop there. In a move that clearly shocked even her own lawyer, the judge ordered my mother to undergo a mandatory psychological evaluation and attend anger management counseling, stating that her behavior demonstrated a clear need for professional intervention. Refusal would mean facing further legal consequences. My mother sat there, for once, completely silent, her usual dramatic flair absent. For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this, finally, will be the wake-up call she needed. 2 days later, my Aunt Linda called. My mother had been hospitalized. Neighbors had found her in her car at 3 a.m., sitting in her own driveway, crying and talking to herself. The doctors were calling it a nervous breakdown. Linda begged me to visit her, telling me I was the only one who could help, that my mother was asking for me constantly. "This is your fault, Arnold," she'd accused, her voice thick with blame. "You and your lawyers and your courts did this to her." Monica supported my decision not to go. The restraining order was still in effect, and we both wondered if this was genuine or just another, more desperate, manipulation tactic. After 4 days, my mother was released. Linda called again. The diagnosis was severe depression and anxiety. She was on medication and had started the court-ordered counseling. Linda said she seemed different, quieter. She suggested I should consider giving her another chance. But I wasn't ready. The private investigator had uncovered something else, something that chilled me to the bone. My mother's campaign against Monica hadn't been a spontaneous, emotional reaction. It had been premeditated. He found evidence that for months before we had even arranged the first meeting, my mother had been actively gathering information. She had been contacting our mutual friends with probing questions about our relationship. She had done deep-dive online research into Monica's background, even contacting Monica's old college under a false pretext to ask about her academic record. This wasn't a mother lashing out in pain. This was a calculated, planned attack. Monica's parents visited, and her father, after hearing the full story, looked me dead in the eye. "Son," he said, "I respect that you're handling this legally, but you need to seriously consider if a person who is capable of this kind of evil deserves any place in your life at all." His words hit me harder than any of my mother's hysterics. I had been so conditioned to her behavior that I needed an outsider to validate just how extreme, how completely unacceptable it truly was. The court-ordered evaluation came back with another diagnosis, one that finally made everything click into place. Borderline personality disorder, on top of the depression and anxiety. Her new counselor, a court-appointed therapist, eventually contacted me. She explained that my mother was, for the first time, beginning to express genuine remorse and was working to understand the roots of her destructive behavior. She asked if, eventually, I would be willing to participate in a family session, but only after my mother had made significant, sustained progress on her own. I agreed to consider it, but I told her I would need at least 6 months of demonstrated, consistent change before I would even think about being in the same room with her. The counselor said my position was perfectly reasonable. In the midst of all this darkness, something beautiful was happening. Monica and I, instead of being torn apart, grew closer than ever. We were a team, a fortress of two against the storm. We learned to communicate with a raw honesty, sharing our fears and holding each other up. We decided to move in together, not just for security, but because it was the natural next step. We found a new apartment in a different neighborhood, one with better security, and started to plan a future that was ours, and ours alone. The last few months have been a slow, painstaking process of rebuilding. My mother, to her credit, completed her court-ordered counseling and has been diligent about her medication. Her therapist reported to the court that she had made significant progress in accepting responsibility for the harm she caused. Eventually, the therapist proposed a modification to the restraining order, to allow limited, supervised contact, but only if both Monica and I agreed. I was deeply hesitant, but Monica, with a grace that still astounds me, said she was willing to try. I don't want to be the reason you never speak to your mother again, she told me, especially if she's really trying to get better. So, we agreed to a single meeting in the counselor's office, governed by a set of ironclad ground rules. There would be no discussion of our relationship, no personal questions, no comments about Monica whatsoever. Any violation would end the session immediately. The meeting was profoundly awkward but civil. My mother, looking smaller and more subdued than I had ever seen her, offered an apology. It was the first one I had ever heard from her that wasn't followed by a but. She apologized to both of us, admitting she had acted out of a panicked fear of losing me. Crucially, she admitted that her complaints to Monica's employer were deliberately intended to damage her career. This admission was monumental. Monica accepted her apology, but was clear. Rebuilding trust will take a very long time, she stated, her voice calm and steady. An apology doesn't erase months of fear. My mother simply nodded and said she understood. We continued with these monthly, supervised meetings. The progress was slow, measured in tiny victories. She learned to talk about neutral topics, to ask about my work without prying, to treat Monica with a detached politeness. There were setbacks. About 6 weeks ago, she tested the boundaries, asking if she could host us for dinner. When I gently told her we weren't ready for that, the old tears started to well up. I just miss cooking for my boy, she'd whimpered. It was a flicker of the old manipulation, and I shut it down immediately. Respecting our pace is part of rebuilding trust, I told her. She backed down, apologized, and we moved on. Throughout this entire ordeal, Monica has been my rock. She participates in the meetings, but maintains a clear emotional distance, keeping the conversation polite but surface level. It's this approach, I think, that has forced my mother to learn a new way of interacting with us, one not based on emotional leverage. The biggest test came last month when we announced our engagement. We told her during one of our coffee meetings. I was braced for an explosion, but it never came. She just looked at us, her eyes filled with a complex mix of emotions I couldn't quite decipher. And then she said, "Congratulations." She asked if she would be included in the wedding. I told her the truth. That would depend entirely on her continued respect for our boundaries. She said she understood and would do whatever was necessary to be there. We have a list of conditions for her potential attendance. She must continue her therapy. She is to have no contact with any of our friends or wedding vendors. She will not be giving a speech. She will sit with her family and will not approach Monica's parents without our explicit permission. So far, she has agreed to everything. The most surprising moment came 3 weeks ago. My mother, through her counselor, requested a private phone call with Monica. Monica, though nervous, agreed, with me listening on speaker. On that call, my mother said something I never thought I would hear. "I was jealous of you, Monica," she'd admitted, her voice quiet. "Not because you were a bad person, but because you represented my loss of control over Arnold's life. I saw you as a threat to my most important relationship, instead of a healthy part of his." Monica thanked her for the honesty, but didn't let her off the hook. She told my mother about the lingering anxiety, about how she still sometimes checks her tires before she drives to work. My mother accepted it without defensiveness, acknowledging that healing the damage she caused could take years. We still have strict boundaries in place. She doesn't have our new phone numbers or our new address. Contact is arranged solely through her counselor. But these boundaries have, ironically, allowed for a healthier, more honest relationship to begin forming. When we do meet, she's present, she listens, and she respects the lines we have drawn. We're planning our wedding for next spring. We've decided my mother can attend, but we also have a backup plan for a smaller, private ceremony, just in case. The restraining order expires in 6 months, but our lawyer has assured us that her documented history would easily support a renewal if her behavior ever reverts. Looking back, my biggest regret is that I didn't set these boundaries years ago. I enabled her behavior out of guilt and a misguided sense of duty. This entire nightmare taught me that sometimes protecting the people you love requires you to make choices that feel unnatural, like standing up to the person who raised you. I never imagined needing legal intervention to have a normal life, but I am eternally grateful we had that option when things became dangerous. Monica and I are stronger than ever, forged in a fire I wouldn't wish on anyone. We are cautiously optimistic about the future, a future we're building together, on our own terms, finally free.